Covering professional wrestling and international cricket. This is Stumps and Bumps on SEN. Brought to you by Mattel WWE action figures and playsets. Recreate the biggest WWE moments at home.
Welcome to another edition of Stumps and Bumps for another week. It is where the worlds of cricket and wrestling combine. My name is Nims Azor, joined as always by Bharat Sundaresan. And Bharat, first off, we've got SummerSlam in the rearview mirror, so that's the wrestling aspect done. But on the horizon for you is a two-test series in the top end in Darwin, and there's actually the practice match is tomorrow.
It is. I head to Darwin in 4 days' time. It's Wednesday today. Saturday is when I go there, so I've not been to Darwin before. And I'll be at my first net session on Sunday. But before we talk more about what we do on our show, which is cricket and wrestling, my routine weekly question to you is, and then also with great gratitude to our great sponsors, Mattel, is who do you have sitting or standing behind you this week?
Well, I always like to bring someone in from my collection at home, and today it is WWE superstar Grayson Waller. The figure in which is depicted there, that's after he won the tag team titles with Austin Theory back at WrestleMania 40.
And he's had quite the last 10 days, hasn't he? I mean, with his now world-famous promo, we can call it that, in NXT, where he spoke about Austin Theory without naming him. Interestingly enough, it just in a way made his point even stronger, at least to me. And then also kind of breaking out of his character. It felt like he broke the fourth wall to an extent. And every time, that's why you and I watch our wrestling, don't we, Nims? And Eric Bischoff obviously talks about it all the time, about when you're left guessing whether in terms of what is real and what is not. I mean, we know it's scripted, but there are elements of it where we like to pick out and go, wait, maybe that bit was him speaking not as Grayson Waller, the wrestler, but as the person behind the wrestler. And that's what it felt like. So, yeah, good choice, good pick, keeping it local.
Absolutely. And we're going to go international to start off with the main event here on Stumps and Bumps, because England cricket is once again in the spotlight in the most pro wrestling way possible, because what is old is new again. Joe Root has been reappointed England Test captain. We have some new faces in the coaching staff with former New Zealand captain Stephen Fleming confirmed as the side's new head coach. Now, Joe Root, he's the most capped England captain at the moment. 65 tests, winning 27, losing 27. And he most recently was the deputy for Stokes when Stokes had to sit out that second test against New Zealand. So this is an interesting one because, well, Joe Root, his tenure as captain before the Bazball era, it wasn't by any means a failure, but at the same time, it was by no means a success, if that makes sense.
No, it wasn't. And, in the end, it ended pretty disappointingly for him, where he almost, to use another old wrestling trope, lost his smile. I was just listening to Ben Stokes doing his long interview with Stuart Broad and Josh Butler, which I highly recommend. I think it's called Love for Cricket, their podcast.
God, did you sit through all 2 hours?
I haven't finished it yet. It is long. It does go. Yeah, the kind of interview I get accused of doing often, like with this long. But look, I think they've asked all the relevant questions. Whether you get a lot out of it from Ben Stokes, you'll have to be the judge on that. But he did talk about how close him and Joe Root have been. Him being Ben Stokes, they've known each other since they were 11 or 12. And he spoke about how towards the end of Joe Root's captaincy reign, he just could see that his eyes weren't there. He just wasn't loving his cricket the way he had been for all those years. To quote Eric Bischoff from one of his many Nitro opening promos back in the day, the more things change, the more they say the same. And that's what it feels like. There's a lot of talk around who would be England's next captain after Ben Stokes's sort of shock retirement, whether Harry Brook, who had been vice captain for quite a while
And
behind
he's
Ben
the
Stokes.
and he's the
Yeah,
white ball
and he's the
captain too.
white ball captain as well. Whether he gets the job or not, a lot of speculation with regards to who the next test coach would be. So once we knew who the test coach would be, that's Stephen Fleming, and there had been reports. I know Lawrence Booth reported that Joe Root, in all likelihood, felt like he would be given the captaincy, but at that point, it felt like more in an interim capacity, like will be the case. From a coaching angle for that three test matches coming up against Pakistan later this month, where Marcus Trescothick who's been the assistant coach, will continue or not continue, will take over as interim head coach, and Joe Root will be captain. But it feels like Joe Root is committed to the job full time, which in all likelihood should mean that next year, when we are there, it's funny to think that the Ashes would already be over.
Yeah.
The amount of cricket Australia are going to play and I'm going to watch and cover and commentate on in the next 12 months, it's crazy to think that we'll be done with all of that at this time next year. But yeah, Joe Root should be captain in another Ashes series. And this is an opportunity for him to do what he could finish his story in grand fashion, right? I mean, no, very few people or very few test captains, especially in English cricket, get a chance to do this all over again. And imagine if he can get the urn back as his final act as test captain next year.
This could be almost like it's almost like a CM Punk style comeback
Yeah,
because he walked away from the test captaincy. Well, he wasn't exactly banished from it, but when he did
yeah.
come back, he now the ball's been given back to him, and now it seems like because he even said himself, like it was almost like an unhappy relationship him with the captaincy, and now
Mm.
here he is coming back. CM Punk leaves the WWE saying, "Oh, this was not a relationship that worked out good." Now he's thriving. Do you think that the CM Punk storyline will sort of follow Joe Root?
Except that Joe Root never got a chance to deliver his own pipe bomb, right? Which is where I think you have to credit Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes. I mean, they kind of made Test cricket fun again for Joe Root. And whatever you think of Bazball and the last 4.5 years of English Test cricket, the one big plus side to it is Joe Root kind of regaining that smile. And like with CM Punk, coming back. I mean, he never went away, unlike CM Punk, but coming back to just being a batter and enjoying it more than he ever has. And he says it so often that he's enjoyed this period more than any in his lengthy, very illustrious career. So, maybe this is what kind of has given him probably the confidence, firstly, but also maybe he feels like he couldn't quite finish the job or complete the job the way he wanted to the first time he was captain for 4 years. And he's been given a chance again, and the chance has come. Like with CM Punk and that world title, it's
Yeah.
just fallen from the sky in many ways. Because who would have thought, right, at the start of the year? I mean, once we heard that they're not going to make too many changes with the English team after the Ashes debacle, nobody ever at that point thought Joe Root would be captain, not just for one that test at the Oval in between, but full-time captain. But never say never with English cricket. And just like with CM Punk as champion now, it feels like Joe Root wants to give it another go.
Yeah, 5 years ago, you would have never thought that CM Punk would even sniff near the WWE. In the bits where CM Punk wasn't in the WWE, he he walked away. He had a UFC career, wrestled in other companies, then had to sort of realize that,
Mm.
WWE is the place to sort of be. Whereas Joe Root almost like the difference in his performances when he's captain and when he's not captain isn't really that different because
Mm.
during the Stokes McCullum era, Joe Root had a batting average of 54.16, 16 centuries among 30, 50 plus
Mm.
scores. But when he was captain, he had an average of 53.34. So it's not like his output changes that much with the weight of the shoulders because even like when CM Punk was wrestling for AEW, he was still a main eventer there,
Yeah.
but it just didn't reach the heights of which like it nothing really changed. It was the same guy.
Exactly. And, much like CM Punk in his first WWE run, which is, comes at a time when it's safe to say John Cena was already kind of transitioning out. I mean, he was still there and thereabouts, but he was already sort of transitioning out. um, he had to sort of, in many ways, he was carrying the company right on his shoulders in some way. I mean, the likes of Triple H was still around, but it felt like the future was on his shoulders for a while there. Much like Joe Root at a time where a lot of the senior batters had kind of moved on, the Petersons and the Ian Bells and the Alistair Cooks of the world. It was Joe Root's time to not just be captain, but to take this team forward. And the fact that he averaged 53 when he was captain, you can kind of break down stats differently, can't you, Nibs? And
Yeah.
for me, that tells me about how much of that burden he had to carry. And for a while, it felt like the India of the 90s, where if Joe Root, or back then it was Sachin Tendulkar for India, if Joe Root made runs, England had a chance. If they didn't, they rarely had a chance, unless like Ben Stokes had like one of those freakish innings. But which is why I think he enjoyed his cricket, or he has enjoyed his cricket so much more in the last 4 years, is because suddenly you had so many other batters around him putting their hand up because of being given that freedom or license. And when it worked, it worked, whether it's Ben Duckett or even Zach Crawley, or had the arrival of Harry Brook on the scene. So he's benefited from it, which kind of tells you that he's always a main eventer. It's just a question of whether he's being the main eventer with having to headline everything,
Yep.
or he has some support, which is why I think CM Punk is enjoying this run so much, because it's not all on him anymore.
Yeah, before in CM Punk's first run, he was basically the main event, and the undercard might have, a Ryback or a Curtis Axel or a Cesaro, not these big marquee stars. Whereas we just look at SummerSlam and you've got Cody Rhodes, you've got the women have stepped up. Like you had an insane match like that. You got Roman Reigns, LA Knight, all of these big names that all of a sudden Punk doesn't have all of that on his shoulders. Yes, he's still in the main event, but he's got much more. There's less responsibility to carry that ship forward. But we were talking. It's actually quite funny and almost fitting that Joe Root's next assignment is against Pakistan, because Pakistan have got Babar Azam returning to the role after he gave up the reins in 2023.
He does, but that has been the story of Pakistan cricket forever, right? I mean, we constantly talk about growing up in the 90s and watching a lot of cricket and being cricket nerds and nuffies. And I mean, back then it was a proper, uh, you know, uh, game of musical chairs when it came to who would be Pakistan captain. Wasim Akram would be captain, and then suddenly they would go to Waqar Yunus. In between, they would just slot in an Amir Sohail or a Saeed Anwar. And then they would go back to Wasim Akram, then Moin Khan would be captain, then Rashid Latif would be captain. And then till the time, I think Inzamam ul Haq took over, and then Misbah ul Haq took over after Inzamam. It felt like, and there was Yunus Khan in between. It was only in the 2000s it felt a little more settled, because every series you had to kind of check who was captain back then.
And then
but
let's
that's
not
just
forget the turmoil that then they couldn't play in Pakistan as well.
yeah.
So you add that into the mix as well.
Totally,
It
yeah.
was an
So
absolute basket case of world cricket.
yeah, very much so. And for a while they had Chan Masood as captain, probably the longest run in terms of years anyway that a Pakistan captain has had for a while. Azhar Ali before then for a while, but then yeah, I mean Babar Azam was captain, and then it was taken away from him. Sarfraz Ahmed was captain in between all of that as well. But he's got another go at it. I mean, there is a test match on right now where they seem to be in a good position. They're only 60 runs, or West Indies only have a lead of 60, and they're 6 wickets down. But they were in a good position in the last test as well, which the West Indies won. So we'll see how Pakistan go. And you're right. It'll be quite something for Joru to start. And I'm happy that he gets one home series before bigger challenges ahead, which is South Africa away, and then that big Ashes on home soil next year.
Yeah. And we like to weave professional wrestling into it, because it really is an 8-year cycle in professional wrestling. With each generation, there's always, whether it's the Horsemen in one generation or the NWO in another one. But really, and this is something that we've spoken to our great man Eric Bischoff about, because he was the architect, of course, of the New World Order. And it's one of the most consistent storylines that WCW used to revisit, because they had a red hot debut in 1996 that actually led them to become the number one professional wrestling company. Now, Eric Bischoff is the only man in history that can say
Yeah.
that he has beat Vince McMahon at his own game. But then, once the sheen came off, once Stone Cold Steve Austin started rising in 1998, and the Attitude Era was big, then we saw things like the NWO Wolfpack, and then
Mm.
we saw a revival in 2000 when Bret Hart led the NWO 2000s, the Silver NWO, and then
Yeah.
a reboot in 2002 in the WWE. So what's old is new, and as we've sort of mentioned too, this is the same thing that happens. Like West Indies cricket went to Brian Lara as captain in
Mm.
3 separate stints. Mahela Jayawardena resigned as Sri Lankan captain. Then Kumar Sangakkara took over. Then he resigned. So then Mahela went back. This almost has that same. The Joe
Mm.
Root appointment seems to be very similar to the Sri Lankan one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. And, you kind of keep throwing the title around. And that's where the complaint comes from in a wrestling sense, which is, you're just kind of recycling the same
Yeah, again with the
storylines
bloodline.
again with the bloodline. Yeah. And or again with, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins had a great match. I thought it was a good match. I know. Can I just say one thing, though?
Yeah.
This has been bothering me for the last few days.
Yeah.
I happened to just randomly YouTube threw up a couple of wrestling review shows. This is not from former wrestlers. These are people like you and me who love wrestling from around the world. And it got me thinking of how different wrestling is as an art form or a performance or performance art form as compared to anything else.
Hmm.
Because so many people seem to just watch wrestling so that they can criticize it.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Well,
there's more unhappiness within wrestling fans, you feel, at least those who talk about it, then, and this is my argument, right? Or this is my analogy. Like if in a music sense, if say Metallica are the WWE, and if you ask someone, and we all know people who don't like Metallica, who only prefer their indie bands, but I don't think in the music world, correct me if I'm wrong, names, that people in the in the music world who like indie music also have shows where they just criticize everything Metallica does. Like
Yeah.
it's simple, right? If you don't, it's a TV show. You don't want to watch it, don't watch it. It just boggles the mind. I know it's nothing new that I'm saying. Everybody knows about it, but I can't imagine the depths to people spending half an hour and an entire hour just hating on something, not hating on something, just saying this was wrong, that was wrong.
Hmm.
They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have. And I'm going, none of us have the credibility to do that. We're not we've not been in that position, which is fine. I mean, we can still critique it.
Of
But the
course, yeah.
fact that all you're doing is spending 90% of a half an hour show just criticizing it, I just don't get it.
It was funny because a mutual friend of ours, Simon, who does some work with us at MCW, after he watched SummerSlam Night 1, he said how much he really enjoyed it. Then he went online and all of a sudden said, "Are people watching the same show I did?" It's like
Yeah.
you only realize it's almost like if you went to a concert and you come away going, "Oh, that was brilliant." Then you talk to someone at work the next day and they say, "Oh, I read online, it was awful." You're like, well,
Yeah.
everything you read online seems to be awful, but
It just seems to be awful. But I think to our point, getting back to a point, I apologize for the digression. The Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, I thought had a great match, and there was a different kind of story, and it kind of tied the knots, not for good, to all the loose ends that they had in their story going back 10, 12 years. But Damian Priest in his promo a couple of weeks ago said, "Oh, they just keep recycling it. It's time for a change." And the WWE, to their credit, last night on Raw after SummerSlam, they
they
do
tried.
that.
Yeah.
They have whether it's Obafemi and Braun Breaker having a bit of a stare down. LA Knight has been thrown into the mix finally. Hopefully this results in something where he beats Roman Reigns and he finally gets his own thing so that Roman Reigns can focus on the bloodline or whatever lies ahead for him. And there are so many other little storylines as well that they're kind of starting. So it feels like a reboot of sorts. But yeah, I mean, it's happened so much in wrestling. You're right. During the WCW days, Even if it wasn't the NWO, there would be Ric Flair would come back into the mix, or Sting would come back into the mix, and
Yeah.
a lot of people as a result, those four in particular, Benoit, Perry Saturn, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko left. Right? They said, okay, there's a ceiling here, there's a glass ceiling, so we just need to leave Chris Jericho another one.
Mm. And it's funny because in a cricket sense, it's almost like you just look at Adam Zampa domestically. He realizes there's just so much I could do here. Time to look for other pastures.
Yeah.
And we've seen, how many times have we seen? Most famously for me is someone that couldn't quite get the ultimate goal at the end, but David Hussey moving to Victoria. He has a tremendous career, and we're really going into the weeds now.
Yeah.
David Hussey, but sometimes that's just sort of how it is. Like there are the people at the top of the card, and who are you if you were in Western Australian cricket in the 2000s, going and saying, no, sorry, someone has to. If you're not better than say Adam Voges or Chris Rogers or Mike Hussey to give David Hussey a go, he had to go elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just been the story of wrestling, because in wrestling, you can find another promotion. I mean, that's happened in the T20 world, T20 cricket world these days. It's just so much T20 cricket on.
Yeah.
You have the choice to not just pick teams, but pick leagues that you want to play in. But it doesn't happen in Test cricket, right? I mean, you play for your country, and that's pretty much where it is. I mean, there have been only a handful who've got a chance to play for more than one country. So yeah, coming back to our point on the recycling of captains, it happens before, but it is also a sign of. I mean, when Mahela Jayawardena constantly kept going back to him, or even with Brian Lara, we mentioned earlier back in the day with the West Indies. It's just also a sign that probably the team management or just the whole cricket ecosystem there have failed in developing the next captain or the next leader, right? And which is what Ben Stokes and Stuart Broad and Josh Butler speak about on that podcast, where Stuart Broad asks him point blank whether it's a misstep or it's not a misstep so much. It's not a great reflection on English cricket that Joe Root has to be given the captaincy again. That the fact that he has to once again carry the load of or the burden of being captain, because by this time 4.5 years of Ben Stokes and 4 years of Joe Root before then, in 8.5 years, the fact that you haven't found another captain and you've gone right back to Joe Root is a sign that something's probably not right.
I think another damning scenario about that is the fact that you've got 18 counties. Like, are you trying to tell me in those 18 counties there's not the next future English captain there somewhere? And I know, and the argument about Harry Brook is an interesting one, because forever and a day, it's always sort of been like people see this as the norm now, where you got a T20 captain, a 50-over captain and a test captain. But for so long, especially growing up in Australia, the idea of multiple captains seemed like madness. And I remember when Aaron Finch was made T20 captain, I think he'd be someone to admit this as well, but it affected his form. Like, he was no longer as good as it was. Do you reckon that maybe that's why Harry Brook hasn't got this? Because if by putting the burden of the test captaincy on him at a time where, let's face it, they're in a bit of peril at the moment, because all of a sudden the great Bazball experiment has not worked. And also, if he was made captain, he's got a different coach to deal with. And then when you go to a limited overs format, he's got his old coach back.
Yeah. And those are very valid points. And I think it's different for England purely because of the amount of test cricket that they play, or amount of cricket that they play. India plays a lot of cricket, but India just has so many players, and they play a lot of cricket, but they play a lot of white ball cricket, and they play test cricket like Australia does, like enough, but not too many. I mean, you just have to look at the numbers of some of these English cricketers, right? I mean, the fact that Johnny Bairstow played over 100 tests, Zach Crawley nearly got there, and it has nothing to do with their credentials, but it's just a case of the volume of test cricket they play. So Harry Brook, there would have been positions where he would have had to have missed some tour or the other because of the number of clashes that happened. But I think it's also a reflection of whether they think he is mature enough to take over that test captaincy role, because he's proven himself now in white ball cricket, beating India in white ball cricket, and he captained the team well in the World Cup where they got all the way to the semi-finals. And again, it's I go back to that podcast with Ben Stokes and Stuart Broad, where Ben Stokes kind of expresses his disappointment that it wasn't Harry Brook, not just now, but even that one test when they gave, after the whole nightclub incident where he was suspended or whatever, however you want to phrase it. The fact that they went back to Joe Root and not Harry Brook, who was vice captain, like what kind of messages were you sending to Harry Brook?
Yeah.
Ben Stokes asked in the podcast, which I guess has happened so many more times in wrestling than in cricket, right? Where we've all looked at wrestlers who the entire, whether you want to call them the WWE universe or all wrestling fans around the world have gone, why? When are they going to put the title on this guy? I mean, LA Knight is an example of that. I mean, different age profile to Harry Brook, relatively speaking, but he's been, in the sense, he's been around for a long time. But still, right? I mean, how often have we heard of like, okay, fine, they've gone to Jey Uso, they've gone to this guy and that guy, but when is LA Knight going to go get his going? Probably it is now with Roman Reigns. So it's kind of similar with Harry Brook, where there isn't someone who seems to perform. I mean, Harry Brook's average in Test cricket is in the mid 50s, which has dropped quite a bit in the last few years or the last couple of years, but still it is quite something, isn't it? So so he's got all the potential and all the talent. It's just about getting the timing right. But England just seem a bit wary with everything that's happened on and off the field with him to pull the plug on him for now.
It's funny. England cricket always seems to have those. They need to have a lightning in a bottle sort of moment, because when all the circumstances work well, like when you had Andrew Strauss as captain, he really had the perfect storm, because you had Graeme Swann as your frontline spinner and Monty Panesar as well. He had such a lineup of batsmen, like from Jonathan Trott, you'd bat so deep, Matt Pryor, all of these names. Whereas now they just don't have that anymore. And with the guiding, with the guidance of Andy Flower as well, back in that era, you could see why they were like a super faction then. Whereas now, it is quite sad. But I will say this, though. Stephen Fleming, his credentials are very good. And the fact that, he's a title-winning IPL coach, he is a coach in the 100, he's still got that mix in. I did find it funny, though, the fact that, like, they've just gone to another New Zealand captain. Like, just like, they basically, like, I was half expecting Daniel Vittori or someone to get a call up.
No, and they've not just gone to another New Zealander, Nims have gone to Brendan McCullum's mentor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost has that whole feeling of, they used to say that about Hulk Hogan, right? If once Hulk Hogan came, he wanted to face the people that he was comfortable with. So then very soon, all his friends or all the wrestlers he trusted would start ending up in that promotion. So it feels a bit like, no, it's not feels a bit like that. It's exactly that, because Brendan McCullum is still there. So they just needed someone who would work with Brendan McCullum, and who better than the man who, he picked up a lot of his coaching lessons from, and Stephen Fleming.
Absolutely. And look, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I'm looking forward to this England Test series because, as you mentioned, Stephen Fleming doesn't start till December. So, and considering the fact that it is August now, what a huge runway of a grace period does Joe Root have? Because all the success now is a bonus for him. If there's no success against Pakistan, let's just say they get that absolutely swamped in that 3-test series, they can just say, "Oh well, we're in caretaker mode because Stephen Fleming doesn't get here." It's almost a win-win for Joe, which is sort of great to see. We talked about SummerSlam earlier. We touched on that briefly, but one of the big news coming out of SummerSlam was, of course, that Brock Lesnar has announced his retirement. He appeared on the Pat McAfee show today, Tuesday American time. He confirmed that his appearance at SummerSlam would be the last of his career. Now, we all thought this happened at the end of WrestleMania. Like at the end of WrestleMania, we sort of said, "Oh, this is it. He's hung up the boots." But because he did quite literally hang up the boots, he took his shoes off, his gloves off, waved goodbye to the fans, and even shared a moment with Paul Heyman. And we thought, "Oh, what a way to go out!" But he returned and had another pay-per-view match at the Premium Live event in Italy, and then, in a fitting swan song, sort of had the Hell in a Cell match in his hometown of Minnesota, and has finally called time on his career. But what a career for Brock Lesnar. I mean, we're of that vintage, Bharat, where we went through the highs of the Monday Night Wars, and we were there through the teething pains of the ruthless aggression era. And Brock Lesnar, when he burst onto the scene and attacked the Hardy Boys on that episode of Raw after WrestleMania in 2002, I think he was just a beast. When the moment you saw him, there was no. It was like this is someone that has been built in a factory to be a professional wrestler.
Built in a factory is the best way to describe him, because I remember how he won over Indian fans, including me. And I don't think this was the plan from the WWE in any way. But remember, they used to show all these packages of him working out and his training.
Yeah,
And I'll never
he'd lick
forget.
tree logs.
Yeah, exactly. Tree logs. And more than even tree logs for Indian audiences, it was carrying gas cylinders along. Like,
Yeah,
remember, he used to lift one or two, or like two or more gas cylinders and walk around and lift them and use them almost as kettlebells back in the day. And look, back then, pipeline gas still hadn't really become as commonplace as it is now in India. And even non-wrestling fans, even my mother could relate with this guy who was just carrying not pressure cooker, the gas
the
cylinders
gas
around.
cylinders around.
Yeah, and it also, his emergence also from a personal perspective came at an interesting time, because for a couple of years there, around, I would say, so we missed the whole invasion angle, which happened just before Brock Lesnar broke onto the scene, right? Because we didn't have WWE on TV anymore. WCW was gone. And even the whole WWE buying out WCW, I watched it much later on YouTube or
Yeah.
wherever, because we didn't have it on Star Sports. Always had the rights to WWE, then that went away. And by the time 10 Sports got it back, 2 years had passed, or at least 18 months. And the first new wrestler we got exposed to was Brock Lesnar. And it was quite the phenomena, as it would have been all around the world.
And what a species he was. So this Brock Lesnar came in as part of that what is now a legendary class of 2002, which also saw John Cena, Randy Orton, and Batista. Now, out of those four, Randy Orton is still the last one standing, and he's looking fantastic. But it was a Brock Lesnar beforehand. He was a very talented collegiate athlete, won an NCAA Division I national championship. He'd definitely give Real American Freestyle a run for its money
Yeah.
if it was around back then. But he signed with the WWE in 2002 and already had the rocket strapped to him. He won King of the Ring in 2002. He also got the Royal Rumble victory in 2003, then later on in 2022, and then was main eventing against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19 in 2003. So then comes the interesting part of his story where he walked away from professional wrestling because he wanted to be an NFL star. Ultimately, that didn't work out for him, so he didn't come back to WWE immediately. He went to Japan and wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling, won the IWGP World Title, defended it against opponents like Shinsuke Nakamura, Giant Bernard, A-Train, we know him, before losing the title to Kurt Angle. He then came back to the WWE in 2012 and confronted John Cena in one of those moments that I think everyone, there were moments in professional wrestling, where friends of yours, and I wonder if it's the same for you, that maybe used to watch when they were teens, all of a sudden they come back and it's just like, did you see Brock Lesnar? I'm like, of course I saw Brock Lesnar. How could I miss it?
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, it's like when you heard about Hulk Hogan, you saw brief glimpses of him, and then he goes missing from the WWF scene back then. And because we didn't get WCW at the start when it started, years later suddenly he's wearing all black, and the same happened with Razor Ramon to Scott Hall, because that's how I got hooked on WCW. I was like, hang on, that's my man Razor. What is he doing? Yeah, why is he wearing a denim jacket, but he's still speaking the same? Why aren't they referring to him as Razor Ramon? So it was a bit like that when Brock Lesnar just came back and just destroyed John Cena, didn't he? I mean, that was the start of that Brock Lesnar run where he would be around for a while, then he would go away, and then his matches were short, sweet. and very impactful. And then there was a feud against Goldberg a few years later, where Goldberg came out of retirement. When was that? It was 2017.
2017. Because
That's right.
I was lucky enough to be at that WrestleMania
Right.
in Orlando, which still has the greatest return ever with the Hardy Boys coming back. But I
Mm.
just remember there was a bit where Goldberg went to spear Brock Lesnar, and Brock, this is how insane of an athlete he is. Jumped like he remember he
Mm.
jumped over Goldberg. The
I
man
know.
is just he's a
Mm.
freak of nature, a guy that size, and the fact that everyone remembers that WrestleMania 19 shooting stars press that he did and just over rotated.
Yeah.
A lesser man would have fallen on their head, and Lord knows what the consequences would have been. Brock Lesnar, just purely by being Brock Lesnar, somehow managed to finish the match and deliver his finisher. And thankfully, he's never attempted it again. I guess the one time he tries it on the biggest stage and it fails. But if you look on YouTube, he nails it picture perfect all the time.
Yeah.
Shades of Billy Kidman there. But it's funny that Brock is now decided to hang up the boots, but he put over Obafemi. Like
Mm.
Obafemi is a made man now.
He is. And just firstly, on the freak that is Brock Lesnar, I mean, as I heard Michael Cole, or maybe it was Corey, maybe it was Wade Barrett the other day on commentary mentioning it was him that when Oba and Brock kind of squared up, if he said that these two are not the same species as us. And
Yeah,
and I was
felt
watching
like
it with
that.
my wife, and she said the same. Yeah, how can you, them, and us be the same
Yeah.
species? And that's been the case with Brock Lesnar from the time he was carrying gas cylinders along,
Mm.
and lifting logs and doing bench pressing logs and everything else he was doing
Oh,
back then.
yeah.
He's never felt like there's very little relatability between us and him when it comes to just strength, right? And the athleticism and everything else he's been able to do for such a long time. And from all reports, he's also been very good at doing business. If he is convinced by someone, and he's more than happy to put them over. And clearly, that has been the case with Oba from the beginning. And Triple H said it on WWE Radio, as it's called now, I think,
Mm.
Busted Open, that Brock had been helping Oba out a lot backstage, and you could see it. I mean, you could see even the couple of times. There was that famous clip, wasn't it, after WrestleMania, where he asks, or before WrestleMania, where he asks him to. You can kind of see he asked him to put his foot on his chest,
Yeah.
and other examples of that. Just the pride with which he looks at Oba, and he's more than just a made man. I mean, he'll always go down as, and I don't even think he'll have to be the guy who retired Brock Lesnar. I don't even think they'll need
Yeah.
to use that angle. It's just play the clip of Brock himself acknowledging him as the future and himself as the past.
And you want to dial it back even further too. Like, I would argue that Drew McIntyre isn't the superstar that he is now if it
Mm,
wasn't for Brock Lesnar. He beat Brock Lesnar at unfortunately at the COVID WrestleMania.
yeah,
But in the lead up to it, there was a part too where much similar to the Obafemi's, like put your foot there, where you can hear him direct Drew's like get the belt,
yeah,
and raise
yeah,
the title,
yeah,
like.
yeah.
So like you're right. When Brock wants to do business, he knows how to do it right. So it's just, and that's why he was a limited attraction, because he was an attraction. That's the person that you look on the posters, because it was like we all first saw Hulk Hogan go head to head with Andre the Giant and just think, who are these guys? That's
Yeah.
what Brock Lesnar was.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about, we always make wrestling cricket comparisons on our show. I was thinking about what cricketer I can compare him to, and I think he's kind of like the Chris Gale of the wrestling
Yeah.
world. I mean, very similar timelines as well.
Hmm.
And when long uh, careers, and a lot of people who aren't massive cricket fans only know Chris Gale as the universe boss who's dominated T20 cricket all around the world. But the fact that the man played more than 100 Test matches, hit two triple hundreds in
Triple hundreds.
Test
Yeah.
cricket, and also played lots of other great Test innings as well, averaged over 40. So he could do this, but he could also go out and be that. And honestly, he had to go away. Chris Gale was already one probably after Brian Lara, that generation, he was the best batter in that West Indian team. But he had to go away. He had to find something called the IPL to really turn himself into this mega star, who then when came back to Test cricket, and he had issues as well in terms of with the board and not being picked in Test squads and all of that. But he did come back to Test cricket. He captained the West Indies. So in many ways, and he knew how to do business as well. So it was, I can totally pitch, and you can definitely, you do not, you can. World cricket has used Chris Gale often as a poster boy for so long as well.
And that is the most apt because I can still remember that, and you might have seen this. I'm pretty sure you would have seen this. The Chris Gale's Pepsi ad that he's done. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic. In fact, we might even put a link to that in our in the show description. But look, that wraps up another edition of Stumps and Bumps. It's been a big one in news. Just a reminder that the Australia versus Bangladesh Test series will be live on SEN. Bharat Sundaresan will be there covering it live. As will, of course, the Test debut of John Donohoe, our great friend, who does some superb stuff in the Big Bash. Now he's getting the call up, David Warner style, for a Test debut. So we're looking forward to seeing that happen. But on behalf of Bharat Sundaresan, I've been Nims Azor. This has been Stumps and Bumps, and we'll see you next week.